This is Ralph Sass. This is Accounting 212. This is the second part of the lecture for Chapter 6. And what we left off with were segmented income statements in traceable and common costs. And we were going to check out an example, and this is where I left off. So notice we can take this even further. We had the television and the computer division. Then we can take the television division and go break it down into, different segments. In this case, they've got large screen or big screen and regular. And notice what they have here then is they have the two sets of screens. Notice they have the big screen and regular, and then they have for the division overall. Okay. So they have all those costs that are directly traceable, and common costs are 10 grand, so the division margin is 60 grand. Okay. So now, that's just how you would go ahead and break it up. Now we can go ahead and take a look at making decisions and break-even analysis based upon this. Okay. Once they calculate or once they compute or prepare a contribution margin format income statement, we can make those decisions. We can start to make decisions. We can do break-even analysis. We can do a whole bunch of different things. So once again, we're going to take a look at this Weber, and they have the two divisions, computers and television. Okay, and I'm going to go, and then remember they increased the They further broke the television division down into the regular and big screen. Suppose there was a 5% sales and increase in sales, okay, due to an increase in advertising. And notice what they did here. They increased their advertising by 5 grand, gave them a $5,000 increase in, or pardon me, a 5% increase in sales. Okay, increased margin a bit for each of the divisions, and overall it increased the division margin by $2,500. Okay, you can also do this by taking a look at the television and the computer the computer breakdown. Okay. And notice the company-wide break-even is computed by dividing the sum of the company's traceable fixed costs and common fixed costs by the company's overall contribution margin ratio. So if we wanted to do that, to figure out, we take the 170 grand plus the 25 grand, and let me go back here. Okay, we're going to take all the fixed costs, the 170 grand plus the 25, okay, that's where we get that 100, and divide it by the 0.54, which will give us our break-even point in dollars. And how did we get that 270 over 500? We took the 270 divided by 500 to get that 54% contribution margin ratio. So that's how, now we can also go ahead and create the segment's break-even point, okay, by dividing its traceable fixed costs by its contribution margin ratio. So we can do it for television, and we can do it for computer, okay, and we can see that the television break-even point's 180,000, the computer is 133,000. Okay, and notice that we didn't include the $25,000 in company-wide fixed costs, so we didn't include those 25 grand there from our break-even point. We were only figuring out the break-even point for those two divisions. When we're assigning costs, okay, all costs to a segment should be included. Okay, we've got to make sure we account for all the costs. Okay, it sounds so easy, but there were a lot of errors made The two big ones, okay, one is we don't use the appropriate base. Okay, we're going to see this when we get to chapter, I believe, 7 on activity-based costing. And it's very hard to trace all the costs. And so it's very common to either A, try to overtrace them and shove them on departments and divisions that shouldn't have those costs, or almost just as likely to not trace them at all back and leave them as unallocated costs for the entire division. Okay? You have to be very careful. Okay? And especially with common costs, one has to realize that somebody has to cover the common costs. Okay? And we don't want to allocate those costs because we may make a profitable business segment appear to be unprofitable. Okay? And by allocating those fixed costs, we can have managers accountable for costs they can't control. So let's take a look at this restaurant and bar here. We've got, the restaurant has a lot more sales than the bar. They're obviously generating a lot more sales margin, and the profit on the bar is relatively small. Keep in mind, these numbers probably should be reversed in the grand scheme of things, but that's an issue for another day. And they have $200,000 in common costs. Okay. If you got rid of the bar, okay, might some of the common costs be eliminated? And the answer is, no. Okay. It should be none of it. None of those common costs are going to be eliminated by getting the bar. I don't know why it shows the B, but it should be A, none of those. So notice what the problem. Okay. Suppose square feet is used on the basis of allocating fixed costs. This is what I'm doing here is I'm showing you how easy it is to make an error in judgment. Okay. Suppose we were trying to allocate some of those $200,000, and we did it based upon square feet, and we said the bar uses 1,000 square feet. The restaurant's 9,000, so we'd allocate 1/10 of the cost of those 200,000 in common costs to the bar, which would be 20 grand. If we did that, okay, watch what happens. All of a sudden, when we take those common costs and we allocate them to the bar section here, we show that the bar is unprofitable. Okay? And since the bar is unprofitable, what should we do? Oh, let's close down the bar because the bar is losing us 6 grand. Okay? The problem with this analysis is, okay, so should the bar be eliminated? The answer is no. Okay? The profit was 44 grand before eliminating the, The profit was 44 grand before we eliminated the bar. If we eliminate the bar, all of those common costs are still there. Notice what happens to net profit. Net profit goes down by 30 grand. It's very easy if you try to allocate costs inappropriately, like we just tried to do, allocate the cost, those common costs, throw some of them on the bar looks unprofitable, let's close the bar. Notice what happens to net income. Net income goes down without the bar. So it sounds really good to allocate common costs, but it can lead to poor decision making and errors in decision making. So one has to be careful. Okay. Keep in mind, you have to use absorption costing for GAAP and IFRS. Remember, International Financial Reporting System. Okay. Because of that, most companies use it for internal reports and don't use variable costing other than to perhaps calculate break even or perhaps take their data and try to manipulate it. Should companies perhaps keep 2 sets of books in order to account for variable costing? And the answer is yes, but do they? And the answer is no. Okay. Now, companies do report segmented financials. Okay, couple of quick notes here. Companies must report segmented results to shareholders using the same methods that are used for internal segmented reports. So if you're going to do something internally, if you're going to look at, a particular region or whatever, do you have to show it to shareholders the same way? Yes. Okay. Notice that requirement motivates managers to avoid using contribution margin variable costing. Why? Because if I use it internally, then I have to share it with my shareholders. If I share it with my shareholders, I have to share it with the public. And if I share it with the public, all my competitors are going to know what those costs and analysis are. And I don't want that's private information. I don't want to make that available to my competitors. That concludes the lecture for Chapter 6, Part 2. Once again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.